Welcome to Athletes Unfiltered, the podcast made by the athlete for the fans. Now here are your hosts, Adrian Martinez and Geoff Exstrom.
Whether you are washing your car, on the way to work, doing the dishes, it does not matter what you're doing when you listen to podcasts, because welcome back to Athletes Unfiltered, season number 2. That's right, folks. We are back. Fresh new episode, season 2, coming your way, spring of 2022. As always, I'm your host, Geoff Exstrom, and alongside with me, got to change up his title a little bit, former Nebraska quarterback and now Kansas State quarterback, Adrian Martinez. Adrian, it's been a while, my man, but it's good to talk to you.
Yeah, excited that we're able to keep this going, and a lot of stories to tell, a lot of new people to interview and hear stories from. So just excited to get going.
Yeah, man. I mean, things have changed since we last talked, and we're going to get all down to it a little later on. But we want to first kind of tell you why we decided to come back. And I mean, Adrian, about in December, we were prepared to just wrap up a finale episode and just put a bow on the podcast as a whole. But then we changed directions and we wanted to tell more. I mean, I think we're going in a new direction that I think will be really, really fun for everyone involved.
Yeah, 100%. There's obviously a lot of untold stories with the Nebraska aspect that I'm excited to get into. But moving forward, there's a lot of people out there, whether they're in the NFL, former Huskers, quarterbacks I know across the country, that I think people would love to hear from and have great stories to tell, great insight to give, that we're looking to get into, broadening this podcast sort of horizons.
Yeah, we want to, like you mentioned, expand horizons, plenty of news stories to tell. We want this to be the number one national sports podcast, your go-to for in-depth conversations, unfiltered conversations. That's what we want here on Athletes Unfiltered. But we have that under our belt. And also, we're on video now. If you haven't already, we're implementing that, so you'll see us all around, not just our voices anymore, but you'll see our faces. And I mean, that's an exciting aspect too, Adrian.
100%. I think it brings a totally new element to our podcast and takes us to another level, which is what I'm excited about. They get to see what, how we tell stories and our guests as well. So that'll be fun, I think, for everyone involved.
We have plenty of big plans for upcoming guests. Stay tuned for later announcements. But right now, it's all what you've been waiting for. Let's recap what happened this past fall. Adrian, plenty of things happened, but we left off in one of the most, landmark games of the Nebraska football season. Let's start at Michigan State. And I mean, that was a biggie. Obviously, it was mentioned that you broke your jaw during that game in in the first drive, to be exact. I mean, let's go through that play from your perspective, and just what happened.
Yeah, well, it was 3rd and long, and we had a QB draw play called, and running up the middle, and I got squared up by a linebacker, and as I was sort of falling, the safety came and knocked me right here. It's just a total sort of freak play, not something that happens very often. You think, how do you break your jaw when you have a football helmet on? And, well, I'll tell you how. It happened to me. Guy got right underneath, and it broke over here on this side. So pretty much you have two, I don't even know what you want to call them, but there's a name. I don't know. It's all right. They keep your jaw in place here. And this one's like this, and this one was like that. And it happened, and my whole face blew up. And I've always been a big advocate for, hey, get up. If you're hurt, walk yourself off the field. Kobe Bryant tore his Achilles and he walked off the court. Just, tough stuff. But in that moment, I mean, there was nothing else I could think about but oh my gosh, my face is burning. Something was wrong. So get to the sideline. They take me back. They think I have a concussion, and it wasn't like a ringing that way. But what I sort of discovered, so I had my jaw, I already had like a little bit of an underbite and a crossbite this way. And my jaw then got displaced back and this way. So it was like this, it was back in my mouth. And we ran back to our locker room, and I had to go in and get an X-ray. And there was some Michigan State like technician there, and I had to fill out paperwork. I'm in my full like gear, and she's like, "Can you like write your name? Like, is this actually happening? Like, we have a game. Like, we need to go. This needs to happen fast." She was in no rush, of course. So I fill out this paperwork, and they get me on here, and I have my pads on, and they take the pictures, and it's like, well, we can't really see anything. I'm like, oh, that's surprising. My shoulder pad was debatably in the way of the X-ray. And I'm like, you know what? Like, I need to get back out there. I feel like I've been in here for an hour, and it turned out to be one possession, I think. And so I run back out there, and they're kind of like, are you good to go? Like, are you feeling okay? And I'm like, honestly, not really, but let's fucking go. Like, let's rock. Let's make this happen. We have to win this game. So face was all swollen, and that game was a crazy one. I don't know what the score was, but it was second half was our game. I mean, defense held them to like 13 total yards. We had like a 7-minute drive for the go-ahead touchdown, 20-13, and we had a special teams collapse. And 2020 overtime, threw a pick. Tough game. And I mean, even tougher when I knew something was wrong. I knew something physically was wrong, and I was in a lot of pain. It wasn't fun. I couldn't eat. I didn't eat anything for a day. And I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on. Something's up. So I get an MRI on Monday, I believe. And I go in there, and they're like, yeah, or a CAT scan rather. And they're like, yeah, you broke your jaw, and you can get surgery and you'll be done for the season, or the other option was, we could wire your jaw shut and you'll be able to play like probably the last week of the year. And I was like, wow. Just like that, pretty devastating news. So this was it's all happening really fast. I get this news and then called up. They're like, hey, there's another option. Spoke to some medical professionals with, I can't think of the firm, what they're called, the Mayo Clinic. Mayo Clinic, and some people at Vanderbilt, some things that they've done. And we came up with a plan. So I go in there that afternoon, and instead of getting my jaw wired shut, because I have to be able to talk, and this decision for me had to be made quick. We had a game against Northwestern. It was like, all right, am I going to keep playing? I feel like we're playing well. We have a really good team. This is a good opportunity. Or am I going to be done for the year? And I made that decision with my family. It was definitely a little scary because it's a serious injury in life. After football, still some things that I have to be concerned about now. But in that moment, I decided that I wanted to keep playing, and we got screws put in my mouth. So they're about like that thick. And I got 6 screws put in my mouth. I had one here, and I had one here. And they rubber banded my mouth shut as a sort of replacement for wiring my jaw shut. I go to practice the next day, and my face is still swollen, and guys couldn't really believe it, and say, hey, this is what we're about. We're playing for something. I'm playing for something. Let's keep this going. And I remember that first day of practice, I had this old lineman face mask on to try and protect me because they had to special order another face mask that go a little bit lower to protect my jaw. And I didn't eat for a couple days. And eventually that next day I was on an all liquid diet because I couldn't move my jaw, and it was rubber banded shut, and I couldn't open it all the way to chew, and I wasn't supposed to chew. The rubber banding was to protect my bite. If I messed with that, it would have been a bad deal for me. They wanted it to heal the right way as best as it could while playing a very physical game of football. So, get that sort of figured out, if you will. And it's like, all right, let's play it by ear. Let's see how this thing goes, and let's avoid quarterback runs if we can. And what's ironic, I think in the first quarter, I had 3 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, I believe you did. So
that was debatable. We didn't necessarily follow that routine. I was feeling really good though. I felt good enough. I remember there was a quarterback sneak, and I stayed up a little too high, and some guy came and popped me right in the head, and just burned for 15 seconds, just straight nothing but pain. And eventually went away. We got through it, and it helps when you're winning, right? You get that great feeling, and it was a night game, and we're playing great, and it's like, all right, we could do this. But yeah, I went on a bit of a tangent there, kind of explaining that first week. It was tough. It was really, really tough. And when I got it's sort of surgery. I think they define it as like a dental operation. But they numbed me with lidocaine in my mouth and cranked the screws in my mouth and like kind of pressing down, and went right in the gums. So like up here in between your teeth. So like they didn't want to hit on the roots so it wouldn't be too painful, but they'd have to get retightened probably every week or so because they kind of start falling out, and you'd feel that pain on your tooth. Like my teeth separated for a little bit. Like this moved over because there was a screw between the teeth. So it was, and on top of that, we decided to keep it a secret.
Yeah.
Right. One, for my own safety, didn't want teams necessarily knowing that information. And that also give them some sort of an advantage, and just part of college football, part of strategy. And I was all on board with that. That is something that I wanted as well. And I wanted that news to be broken after the season. Once things had settled down, that sort of experience, if you will, would be shared.
Yeah, because I remember you calling me up and telling me that. I mean, and I guess we should tell everyone that as the reason we stopped mid-season, just because it would not be in the best interest for Adrian to speak when he has a broken jaw.
Yeah.
And I mean, and you trying to hide that throughout, everyone just trying to keep that on the down low throughout the entire season. Because I remember people would say, noticing you would just take rubber bands out of your mouth after press conferences and whatnot. I mean, how difficult was that talking afterwards? I mean, how difficult was that?
Yeah. Well, the whole ruse of, I would take my rubber bands off before going in for a press conference, and I couldn't smile too much or else the screws would show at the top of my mouth. And it hurt. It would physically hurt to like move my face a certain way. So that kind of helped, I guess, from keeping me from doing that. But it was all part of it, and I was willing to do it for the team and for what we were trying to accomplish. I felt like it was a necessary sacrifice, and that meant after games taking the bands out and trying to stay as disciplined with it as possible and keeping it as low key as possible. Not very many people could know about it. Like when I told you, I needed to let you know there was a reason why we weren't going to continue recording during the season. I kind of wanted to clue you in a little bit on what I was going through. And there were a lot of things like that. And, if you could see in the games, the rubber bands like kind of crossed in my mouth, and you couldn't fit a mouthpiece in there. So it's just me kind of rubber banded shut. And that's the only thing protecting me against, breaking it worse.
And when did you fully heal from that? So
technically it takes around like 5 to 6 months to fuse back together. So that was a downside to not getting surgery, is that it'll never be the same in theory. So even now you see it kind of goes that way. It comes back. I know that audio is going to sound really weird, but if you watch the video, it'll make a lot more sense. But it used to be the other way. It used to be more the other way. And it would just go straight down. But now that this is still healing, it hasn't really fully locked in. So it's a process, it's something I'm still working through now. My diet was something I had to really watch and make sure I was getting enough calories and keeping my weight, because I couldn't chew like hard foods. I know one week I grinded up my steak in a bullet blender and ate it like it was oatmeal. It was probably one of the worst things I've ever had in my life. It was terrible. But that's, that was part of it.
Yeah. I was about to ask about with your liquid diet, what was the weirdest thing that you didn't think you could just put in the liquid to drink? And I guess steak is probably up there.
Yeah. and then I started trying to get creative with it. Like I put steak and some olives, like some of those Greek olives in there, maybe for a little flavor. And I put some au jus sauce. Terrible. Didn't make it better at all. It was terrible. Don't recommend it to anyone.
That'd be so brutal. Man, do you look back on it now and be like, man, sucked?
I mean, it was a hell of an experience.
Yeah.
I think it's all how you look at things, right? You could look at it like, hey, that really sucked, and we started losing some games, and that was a hard time, or like that was an experience and a half. I'm proud of myself for going through it and continuing to go through it, and really thrive. So I think our team stayed really tight, and they were really supportive of me through it, and that helped. But even, I didn't even tell guys on the team, what my decision process was, or when I was going through that. I wanted to keep it as private as possible. And eventually guys kind of found out, when they saw me roll up to practice in an O-line face mask, what was going on.
Now, how much did that affect your in-game play as well? Because obviously that's going to be going through your mind with every time you decide to tuck and run, or even you're pressured. So, I mean, how much did that affect your in-game play?
Yeah, that was part of the decision too, because I didn't want to go out there and play if I wasn't going to be confident in it and feel like I could do everything that I wanted to do. I mean, I had to play my game, and I felt like I still did. I still made plays running the ball throughout the year, despite that. And you have to remain fearless. I couldn't run scared, and certain hits definitely stung more than others, but that's football, and I found a way through it.
You certainly did. And we talked about Northwestern quickly. I mean, you guys crushed them.
Yeah, we had a great game plan that game, and the guys came out fired up, and we hit them early, and we ran the ball really effectively. And if I were to say one key indicator for us is, if we were able to run the ball well, I'd say our offense executed really well. Outside of the Wisconsin game, we were able to run it a little bit, but we had more of an aggressive game plan throwing the ball that game. But in general, I'm sure that's a common theme you can find across all football teams, regardless of level. But when we were able to run the ball effectively, which we were from the jump in that Northwestern game, I know Jaquez Yant, he had a great game. I think we had a couple other guys doing really good things, and I was even able to run the ball effectively that game as well. And that was able to set up the play action game, and really our offense was clicking the way we wanted it to. And that's what we wanted it to look like, for the rest of the games. And whether that played out the way we wanted to or not, it didn't all the time.
I mean, you follow that up with Michigan the very next week. I mean, even though it was a loss, that game must have been fun just to compete in, because that was, at least from my perspective, the most alive Memorial was since that 2018 opener against Akron.
I would 100% agree with you. That was the most fun I've had in a football game. The atmosphere was crazy, obviously against a really good opponent. And I think that showed the type of team we were that year. You can look at any of the games. We fought each game, and we felt like we matched up well enough with anyone to beat them. And we easily could have won that game. I shouldn't say easily, but we should have. We really should have won that game. And we put ourselves in the position to do it. Our guys came out really strong in the second half, played well. Momentum was on our side. And, we made a lot of good plays. Defense played well. And our offense in the second half really hit its stride and capitalized on some of on that one turnover, took the lead. And even in the fourth quarter, I believe with 6 minutes left, we took the lead. And really we're feeling confident in our ability to move it on them. And besides, Michigan State obviously played Michigan really well. And then Michigan's eventual loss to Georgia. But we really played them as tough, if not better than everyone else on their schedule. And I think that says a lot about the type of team we had and the talent and play, especially on that night. We were really playing well.
And take us through that play. Fumble.
Yeah.
Just take us through it.
Yeah, that was, I believe it was second down, maybe. It might have been third down. It was short, really just trying to get the first down. And I remember saying in the post-game press conference, I don't want to make excuses for myself, and I won't, and that stands true till today, got to be better with ball security. And I believe in that, but I will say not once in my life have I been stood up complete. Like I'm done. The play's done. If you're a football player, you keep moving out of safety. You're in the box, you have 6'6", 300-pound guys all over the place, and you keep your feet moving unless you want to get your knees taken out. You're to be done for, really. With that being said, got to hold on to the ball. I thought the play was done. I remember right after I turned to the ref and said, "Was the play not dead?" And he's like, "I don't know why no one blew the whistle." Well, that doesn't help me.
Yeah.
At this point, that doesn't matter. You can't review that type of play. And it costs us the game, and in those type of big games, or when you're playing an opponent that's really good, those are the plays that matter. And that's just the reality of it. You can even go to the AFC Championship game and the NFL games that are being played in the playoffs right now. It's end of games. All these games are really, really tight.
Yeah.
And some of those critical plays at the end of the game are what makes the difference. And for us, that play is what cost us. You could point to a lot of different things of what could have gone right here. Oh, the defense could have made a stop. Oh, we could have scored here if we didn't get this penalty, whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, got to be able to make those plays. And I definitely felt responsible for that in that game. It was really tough. No matter how well I felt like I played a really strong game, made some good throws, made some good running plays. But, unfortunately, that is kind of, I was labeled that game, as losing it there. And I can't 100% blame people for doing that. It's just the reality.
And it shouldn't all go on you. It's, again, that play specifically is just such in a gray area, I guess, in terms of what happened. And it kind of boggles my mind a little bit that the ref said, "I don't know why it wasn't called dead."
Yeah.
I can't believe he told that to you. He told you that.
Yeah. Refs are human too, right?
Yeah.
And you could see it in the NFL. You see it all across college. Things aren't always called correctly, but that one definitely cost us. And it was a tough one to stomach because we had it, we really did. And it was close to another overtime game. And I will say, to kind of backtrack a little bit, that Michigan State game could have been I mean, a momentum turner for us as far as winning more games if we were able to pull that one out, and we definitely should have. I think that would have set a different tone for the rest of our season, and I think it would have for Michigan State too. We were, I mean, I don't say this just to say it. We were every bit as good as Michigan State, but we were 3-9 or whatever we were, and Michigan State was in the Cotton Bowl or Sugar Bowl, and we were the same team. Without a doubt. I mean, that without a doubt. But certain aspects of our game as a football team were lacking, and that's part of it, and have to find a way to come out with some of those close wins. And Michigan's another example of that we were very close to doing and weren't able to do. That could have also changed the course of our season.
Now, talk about Michigan too. Aiden Hutchinson, obviously going to be top 2 pick coming in the draft. Yeah. What'd you think of him? I mean, he had some good plays in there from your perspective on the field.
I will say, playing in the Big Ten, we play so many good D linemen, and I've played against Chase Young. I mean, the guy from Michigan, from what was his name? Gosh, you got to help me.
Rashawn Gary.
Rashawn Gary. I mean, there's been countless. The Iowa guy. Come on, he's on the Bills now. He was going to be a first rounder.
Oh, Espana, is that his last name?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So countless guys throughout the years, and I would say Aiden Hutchinson stands among them. For me, I didn't think he was a world beater. Now he's going to be the first overall pick or second overall pick, and he's obviously a stud. And he made his fair share of plays. I think that's sort of the mindset you go into when you face a guy like him. Like, hey, he's going to win some plays. Mm-hmm. We're not going to shut him down. He's going to win some plays, and I'm going to have to be ready to get the ball out a little bit quicker. That time clock has to go off a little bit quicker. But I wouldn't say he stood out a crazy amount because their team was just really good. So he was a piece. They had a Sam Nickel who's really good, a linebacker who played really well, and they fit together really well. And he was able to make some great plays out of that, in my opinion. Now, he's a freak athletically. I feel like we got the better of him a couple times, and that's just part of football. I think he's a really good player, but for us, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, we're playing this guy. It's like, okay, well, it's another week in the Big Ten. There's another edge rusher who's a really good football player. Like, hey, it's part of it.
Yeah. Well, they went to the college football playoff for a reason. Then you go out to Minnesota and drop one there. But the biggest thing from over in Minneapolis was that it was mentioned throughout the morning of the game that the energy was just not there. And multiple players said that. And would you concur? That's kind of what happened. Could you tell the energy wasn't as high? Again, it's a morning game on the road up north. It's cold. Was that kind of what happened there?
I mean, I think that's personally, I think that's a weak excuse for the result of the game. I don't think you can label the loss as a direct correlation from the lack of energy in the locker room pregame. Now, could have the energy been better? 100%. But we had countless opportunities to win the game that I think are unrelated to the energy in the locker room. Now, as a leader, I felt responsible for getting that energy right. And I think that's on the whole team. It's on the program. It's on all of us, but that wasn't the reason we lost the game. We had an opportunity to score on the 1 yard line. We didn't. The first half, we had like 3 possessions. Our first drive was a 3-and-out. Before we knew it, we were down 14-0, and there was like 6 minutes left in the second quarter. That is being outplayed, period. Now, is that because of energy, or is that you could call it a lot of different things. You could call it energy. You could call it attention to detail. You call it focus. You can call it, being dialed in, whatever you want to call it. But energy in the locker room before the game, I don't think that's valid.
Mhm.
you know, and that's something we all took responsibility for, and we got it turned around, but with better energy in the Purdue game, we lost. That is not the determining factor of winning or losing a football game. It is one of the things. And like I was saying, there were a kind of a list of things we had to do better, and we were really close, but it wasn't just one thing. And that game is another example of that. It wasn't one thing that wasn't one reason we lost the game. Trying to look back and remember that game, we had a lot of missed opportunities. I had some missed throws, an opportunity to pull on the goal line a couple plays before we got stopped on the one. I think I could have pulled it and ran around the edge and scored. I mean, just little things like that, but that they add up across a game. And in the Big Ten and Minnesota, they are a lot of disciplined teams who don't make a lot of those mistakes and will make you pay for it. And we were definitely, we definitely lost by our own sword. We fell on our own sword a lot this last year.
So you guys do Minnesota, drop one to Purdue, but I really want to talk about Ohio State because I think a lot of things happened during that game. Obviously, you guys played them really tough, a team that ultimately won the Rose Bowl. Take us through that game and just how talented was that Ohio State team? Obviously, Jackson Smith and Jigbo went for 240 yards. They had some guys on defense too. How'd that game go?
Yeah, they're Ohio State, right? They're always going to be talented. We knew that going in, but just like any other game, we were jacked up and ready to go. I guess jacked up, that's contradicting the Minnesota game, but we were ready to play and we felt confident. And just like some of the other games, we had opportunities to win, and our defense played really well. Our offense had some big plays, like we did, honestly, for most of the year. We did generate a lot of big plays.
First time in a while.
Yeah. I think we led the country in like plays of 60+ yards, and we were top 5 and 50+ yards. Something, I know that was a point of emphasis, and we really did hit that mark. But with Ohio State, yeah, it was another really close game. We had an opportunity towards the end of the game and just weren't able to really capitalize there. And those things are tough. I don't know if we kicked a field goal or if we tried kicking a field goal and we missed. I can't remember exactly the order of events there, but another tough loss to a really talented team. But again, it was another team that we felt we knew we could beat, and we fell short. There is a quick little wrinkle detail I want to throw in just for my timeline. Before that Minnesota game, I actually got a high ankle sprain like 4 days before the game from practice. We had a run scheme where we left the three tech unblocked. He was my read, and it was a low snap that hit my leg. I went down to grab it, and the D lineman flew into my legs and took my legs out to try and jump and get the ball. And I thought it was a lot worse. Thankfully, it wasn't. High ankle sprain, regardless. But I had to make sure I turned around and was ready to play for that Saturday. And that also sort of affected the game plan. I was already sort of spotty on, not personally, but it's sort of like a mutual thing. Like, hey, we're going to try and run you less because you have a broken jaw. And now you have a high ankle sprain. I was sort of out there a little hobbled. And I wasn't able to run the ball as effectively. And I think that had a little bit of an impact on how we were able to play that game. Obviously the option was a part of our game that we implemented this last year in the offense, and it worked pretty well in my opinion. But at that point I was sort of not 100% and not able to run it. So it did affect our game plan a little bit.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up too, because leading into that week, there was rumor going around that, there was a little bit of a freak out with what happened there. Did everyone kind of suspect that you might have been out for the Minnesota game? Because you said that you thought it was a lot worse than it actually was.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't practice until I think I went through I didn't have a full padded practice. I went through Thursday's walkthrough, and then Friday was our fast Friday. And it was like every second counted. You know, it'd have been even better if we could have played a later game, but we had to play a morning game. But active treatment, I mean, we were really grinding to make sure I was going to be able to play. And again, I mean, that it's not an excuse because I chose to play. You know, there was no one forcing me to play. It was my decision to play, and I felt healthy enough to play. But it definitely played a role in my ability to run the ball and in our game plan for me to do so.
Now, was there any pushback from Coach Frost or anyone else in terms of saying, hey, you have a broken jaw, and now you have a high ankle sprain, maybe we shouldn't play you? Was there any pushback from that point, or was it you told them you feel good, all right, we're going to let you go? How did that work?
No, there was no pushback. I mean, it was sort of
not, but
yeah. No pushback, but again, it was my decision. You know, the door was open for me to not play if that's what I wanted to do. You know, there wasn't a pressure to keep going on. It was something that I wanted to do, and yeah, I mean, just how it sort of played out. It was definitely acknowledged, you know, that I was going through some injuries and battling through it. But again, it's football. A lot of people have injuries and are playing. So,
in going now back to the Ohio State game, lose a close one there. Did you realize at the time that would be your final home game playing in front of Memorial Stadium?
No, I really didn't. When people asked about my future, I genuinely didn't know. In my mind, ideally, I wanted to see what it would look like if I were to give it a shot at the NFL, what my evaluation would be. I think that's what most people go through and sort of weigh my options then. And who could have guessed, you know? Pretty crazy. And obviously you never think it was a year of injuries that I played through, and then one that really knocked me out at the end. But
no.
I had no idea, you know, I don't think it would have changed anything, you know, playing a Memorial, you know, now that I'm not a part of Nebraska anymore, it seems even more special to me. You know, like it really is one of the top environments in the country. You know, plain and simple. And I was very lucky to play there. So, and thankful for my time there, genuinely.
But another piece of news that happened, that was the time during the broadcast, Fox broadcaster Gus Johnson spilled the beans a little bit about your broken jaw. And now, were you told going up into the press conference? Is that when you were told that it was revealed?
Yeah. So one of our media guys came up to me and was like, hey, just so you know, like Coach Frost just addressed your broken jaw. And it's like out officially now. And I was a little shocked, you know. Obviously we had just lost the game, and that wasn't something I was necessarily prepared to talk about and had any knowledge was going to be revealed. So it was definitely a surprise to me, but I found out right then, and then seconds later I was on the podium.
Did you have to hold back a little bit, kind of like, oh, I don't want to talk about this?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. I've always felt like it was my responsibility to do my best in the media. I felt like I represented a lot of people, and it wasn't the easiest thing to talk about just because I felt like I couldn't necessarily do it justice, if you will, just given the circumstances. It didn't necessarily feel right to me. I didn't think it was appropriate to be talked about at that time, given the result of the game and the time frame. It was something very personal and private to me, and I wanted to be the person to tell it, because I couldn't. My grandparents didn't even know, you know, like my grandma's texting me like, hey, you have a broken jaw? Like, yeah, sorry you had to find out over a fucking broadcast on Fox or a news conference, press conference post game. I wanted to be able to tell that myself, and I wasn't. And I know that's not incredibly unique. I know other athletes have stories that aren't able to get shared before that they can't necessarily tell their own narrative.
Tom Brady over the past weekend.
Yeah, I mean, that's a classic example. People jumping the gun, and it's the industry. It's part of it. It sucks. I do feel like in my situation, it could have been avoided. I wasn't looking for excuses. That's why I didn't. It wasn't put out there. Part of the reason, and for me, that was almost like creating an excuse, and I didn't want that. But not everything is in your grasp of control, right? And we worked through it, and there was even bigger news to be shared a day later, so it sort of got swept under the rug, really. And for me, that was also a little bothersome. One thing after another, and humans, we can only handle so much at once, right? And so it was definitely a lot to handle at one time.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, during that bye week, bunch of firings on the offensive side of the coaching staff. Take us through that day from start to finish about how you found out the news, and just the reaction afterwards, not just from you, but from your team as well.
Yeah, well, we found out in a team meeting, and the news pretty much broke a little bit before then. So, and everyone sort of had an idea of what was going on, and it was really tough. And there was a lot of hurt people. It wasn't like a kumbaya. Like this is what's best for this program. That's not how guys. It's typical, I'm sure, but not how guys react when, for me, like Coach Verdue was my coach for 4 years, and Greg Austin was Cam Jurgens' coach for 4 years, and there are embedded relationships there. And I know Coach Frost had close relationships with those guys as well. He was their friend and knew their families, and, had a lot of shared experiences with a lot of those guys that, he decided to let go, and it was tough for everyone. I don't think anyone in there really wanted to hear what was being said. I mean, but that's what happens when you lose too many football games and you're in an environment and in a program that expects to win. I mean, that's what you signed up for. So it was tough for us. And we found a way. I'm very fortunate to have really good dudes in the quarterback room and good dudes on the team. And we really stuck together. And as you saw, I mean, the Wisconsin game, this is best defense in the Big Ten, and we lit it up on them offensively. The Iowa game, I wasn't playing in. The guys damn near pulled that one out, had a big lead and played great against a team that was a really good football team, and that's really has to be attributed to the players and how we stuck together, fought for each other, and had a lot of pride in continuing to play. And that's what we decided to do. And part of it was like, hey, we want to make our coaches proud. We want to continue to represent this program, and we had a lot to fight for. So there was a lot of pride in that. But initially with the firings, it was just a lot to handle. And I think guys processed it in their own ways. And I know for me personally, it was really hard because I felt responsible for Verdue being let go. And I'm sure other guys had a lot of that same sentiment. And that's part of it, that's your position coach, and you've been playing for him on the field,
Were there any tensions with Coach Frost afterwards? I mean, obviously, maybe some players saw it coming, some didn't. I mean, was there a lot of understanding, or was it high tensions for a while?
I think no matter what program it is, there's going to be high tensions for some of those reasons I, discussed. Just players having really, really close relationships with their coach. And you'll have some guys who also didn't like the coach and, might be happy that they're getting a new coach as well. That's part of it. So yeah, I think more than anything, guys wanted to understand, and Coach Frost did a good job of sort of laying out the reasons of why the decisions were made. Now, that doesn't mean people are going to agree with it or be like, hey, that's awesome, or like, we love you now. It's not – it's tough. I mean, he's in a tough position having to relay that sort of news to the players, but that's the business, and, some people will understand and some people won't. And there are definitely high tensions, and I think that's just unavoidable. I think when a decision like that's made, it's just inevitable for something like that.
Did you have an exit meeting at all with Coach Verduzco? And if so, what was that conversation like with him?
No exit meeting. It was a pretty abrupt thing.
Okay.
I don't think anyone really got that type of closure from that. But I did make sure once the season was over, to reach out to Verdu, and we were able to talk and catch up. And, he's someone that'll be in my life forever. He's had a tremendous impact on me, and that's a relationship that just doesn't go away just because he's no longer my quarterback coach.
Now, obviously, you already mentioned that at the time you didn't know about what the future would hold for you. But after that, was that kind of a turning point in terms of maybe thinking about potentially transferring or heading off to the NFL?
Without a doubt. At that point in time, in all honesty, that was my mindset. I was like, hey, I want to see what's out there as far as my NFL prospect, and maybe see if playing somewhere else would be a good option for me in trying to get to the NFL, because that's my ultimate goal. That is my priority. I want to win some football games, and I think those things go hand in hand. So at that point in time, obviously there's a little bit of thought that goes into that, but also Wisconsin was a handful, and they were really good. And regardless, we had to play as well as possible that game in order for anything to be an option, and we did play really well. I'll go into that game just a little bit. We had a really aggressive plan. Frost did a really good job of scheming some good things up, and Steve Cooper as well. He was an offensive analyst. And we wanted to be really aggressive. Like, hey, let's go shoot our guns. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have anything to lose. We feel like we match up really well with these guys, and we did it early. I mean, I know first couple plays we do some deep over routes to Samori, and got down the field quick and scored. And we're like, hey, we can do this all day, And for the most part, we did. I know Samori had a big game, and Austin played well as well. And kind of a turning point in my story, adding another layer to it. At the end of the first half, rolling out to the right, I throw a ball that ends up being incomplete to Samori towards the sideline, and I fall extended on my shoulder, on my arm. My arm's out and pops, and I kind of just feel, I feel it. I'm like, I've had a torn labrum in high school. I tore this one sophomore year, and my third one. So I know what it feels like, and I had that feeling, and I was kind of trying to shake it out. And I believe Logan went in the next possession. We had one more possession, and towards the end of the half, we ran the ball and go in the locker room. They're like, hey, how do you feel? What do you think it is? I'm like, I think it's my labrum, and it hurts to throw. And like, okay, like what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I want to play. Like, I want to see how it feels, And honestly, going in, it was pretty much like almost decided that I wasn't going to play. I wasn't going to play that second half. And I was warming up, I was throwing. It was like, all right, Logan's going to go in, and I'm throwing. And then I get to the sideline, and I'm like, all right, let's like, let's go. You know what I mean? Like, let's rock, let's play, let's make it happen. So go in and, was able to finish out that half. I know I threw a pick in the second half, and it was kind of gearing up to throw a deep ball to Omar, and my shoulder, it just came out all messed up. Just the angle flew out of my hand wrong, and it just terrible interception. I was like, geez, but that's what the labrum is, it's a stabilizer. So not having full control over the ball, but was able to play a pretty good second half and almost get the win. I mean, we drove down around the 20, the end of the game with a debatable PI call.
It was, but
yeah. Well, we'll leave that for you to say, but we definitely agree. But after that, I had a lot to think about. It was sort of like, okay, what are my next steps here? And for me, it was getting surgery as soon as possible so that I could play the next season. And that pretty much took NFL prospect out of the picture for the next year. I sort of thought of it in simple terms, like, hey, say if I'm a late round guy or an undrafted free agent, I get an opportunity and I'm in a camp and my shoulder's not 100%. Am I really able to fully maximize that opportunity? As opposed to, say, this next year, I'm in the same position and late round, undrafted, whatever. I go and I'm fully healthy and can maximize that opportunity. I felt much stronger about that. So it was really between transferring or staying and playing another year at Nebraska. And for me, I'd sort of been leaning towards leaving. I felt like I needed a new opportunity, a new scenery, a new challenge. I needed to sort of get away and find something new. And that was my initial feeling. And like, all right, let's see how this next couple weeks go, and I'll sort of feel it out from there.
Yeah. And I mean, it was interesting too. Well, I want to backtrack just for a second, and the preparation that week for Wisconsin, obviously with the offensive staff down to bare bones. How weird was that week? I think obviously Coach Frost probably it was a more prominent figure in leading the offense that week, but must have been weird.
Yeah, it definitely was. It definitely was. I mean, we were missing a lot of coaches, and a lot of GAs had to step up and fill the role of position coaches and do their best job. And in all reality, I think we all, at that point, we knew we weren't making a bowl game. We were just playing for each other. Like, hey, let's go have fun. Let's go try and have some fun on the practice field. Because I mean, like I had sort of alluded to earlier, when you're in an environment and on a team, a program that expects to win and you're not winning, there are some actions that have to take place, and it also makes it not a lot of fun. And I mean, I signed up for it. We all signed up for it. This isn't a excuse, it's not a plea. It's just the reality. So for us, we were like, all right, let's go have fun. And part of that was, hey, Coach Frost saying, Coach Coop, let's be super aggressive. Let's go out there and sling the rock. And I was all for it and felt really comfortable with what we were calling. And we went out and really did a good job, and part of that was probably our spirit and our mentality going into that game. Like, hey, we have nothing to lose. And it worked for the most part. It almost resulted in a win.
I mean, there was a video released after the game of you walking towards the locker room, and you're taking a look all around Camp Randall, and it kind of seemed from that video that might have been it. And obviously, you talked about it. That definitely was in your mind afterwards about.
Yeah. It was. Yeah. And that video, I had Brody Belt, my roommate, who I've lived with for 4 years, under my arm. And I did sort of have that feeling of like, this might be the last time I ever have an N on the helmet. I wanted to relish that moment. I wanted to enjoy it. And unfortunately it was after a loss, but it was also a hard fought game. And I was proud of that. And sort of all those feelings of what I'd been through during that year were coming to a head. It was like the jaw, the ankle, the losing, the fumble, the ups, the downs, the narratives swirling about me and my newly injured shoulder, all sort of came to a head, and like, hey, this might be it for me here. And I wanted to make sure that I took the time to really let that moment sink in. And then, a random security guy came and gave me a hug and was like, hey, it's an honor to watch you play here one last time. I was like, I appreciate that,
Yeah.
And, there were a lot of really, really good people who helped me along the way at Nebraska. And all those people sort of came to my mind in that moment. That more so felt like my senior day than my actual senior day did,
Yeah, so Iowa week comes by, comes and goes, and then season's over. You have time to think. 6 days later, you announce you're transferring. In that 6 day period, was there a certain moment that made your mind clear saying, I'm going to transfer? Was there someone that you talked with that kind of convinced you, or what was that like?
Yeah. Yeah. There were definitely some things that transpired that made me more certain that I wanted to transfer. I had conversations with people that I trusted, whether that was people involved with scouts, wanted to understand what the NFL perspective was. Like I said, that was my goal. That is my goal, to get to the NFL and achieve my dream that way. And I want to know what was sort of the perspective there on my game, what I needed to improve on. If there was an opinion out there of whether staying in Nebraska or going somewhere else would be better for me. And I felt like after hearing some of those things, going somewhere else was the better option. And I think that had more to do with me than it had to do with Nebraska, more about proving myself in a new space, a different offense. I could show some of the skills that I have that I wasn't showing in Nebraska. I can work on little things like that, and less to do with necessarily what we were doing at Nebraska or not doing. And then for me, it just there was a lot at Nebraska. There were a lot of ups and downs, a lot of emotions tied in, and I felt like it was right for myself and the program to move on. It was definitely a tough decision. I had a lot of conversations with Coach Frost and some of my former coaches and other people in my inner circle, just about their opinions. And, it wasn't easy, but I felt like I know I made the right decision for me. I played 4 years. I set the, career yards record. I was able to accomplish a lot, and coming back for a fifth year just didn't necessarily feel right to me. And I needed something different. Those 6 days were definitely a lot of, contemplating and weighing some of those options, and felt like it was the best move for me.
And just from an outside perspective, it just seemed like the relationship between you and Nebraska it come to a head. I mean, it followed through, and there wasn't really anything that you guys got what you wanted from each other. And sometimes it just naturally concludes. And I think that's what happened. And I mean, it's transferring to another school gets rid of the baggage, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a clean start, and not anything from the past necessarily weighing you down, or just give an implication of what might happen the next season and whatnot. It just seemed like the relationship just concluded naturally.
Exactly. And that's how I felt, I had given everything I could to Nebraska. In my mind, the highs, the lows, endured everything I could and laid it all out there for Nebraska. And I will always love Nebraska. I mean, that is my alma mater. It is. I mean, I love the place. I really do. But coming back for another year, like you said, there's a little bit of baggage there. And that's from the games, from Coach Frost and I. I mean, there's a lot there that I felt like I would benefit from a fresh start somewhere else. And I also truly felt that it'd be better for both of us. And that is just that's just business, I know some people are, thank God he's gone, some fans, and some people are like, man, we're gonna miss him. And that's part of it too.
What was the conversation like with Coach Frost in the meeting that you told him that you decided to transfer? Did he make a big pitch trying to convince you to stay, or how'd that work?
Yeah, I mean, he wanted me to stay, as well as, like some other guys that decided to leave, and some of those other guys decided to go to the NFL, decided to give it their shot at the draft. And I think that's what a good coach does. He wants guys like me. I've been in the program 4 years and really understand how it works, how the Big Ten works, and our offense, and obviously a captain on the team. And we have a deep relationship that goes a while, and he wanted me to stay. But some of the things I've told you, what I told him, and just like the news he broke to the team about, firing the coaches, I think he understood it. I don't think he necessarily liked it, but he is a guy who will always love me, and will always be there for me. And I'll definitely be the same for him. I have a tremendous amount of respect for what he does. It's a lot. Being Nebraska's head football coach is a demanding job, and no one will understand the things he goes through except him. And I understand that to an extent, being a quarterback at Nebraska and some of the things that I went through. I think it's a very unique experience. And I really do respect him for what he's done there, and what I believe he will do moving forward. But like I said, for me, and it was really hard to me. There's a lot of loyalty and a lot of, responsibility I feel for Nebraska, and that's what was really holding me down to the place. But again, I felt like the best decision for me was to go somewhere else. And ultimately, I think he was able to respect that.
And now you're one of us, now you get to view the program from another perspective.
Yeah, no, it's already so interesting. It's always so interesting. I still see a bunch of stuff on Twitter, even though, let's get to some lighter stuff. So fucked up. The all Nebraska accounts unfollowed me. I guess it's a business. It's cool.
Come on.
Nebraska football, Nebraska Huskers, the university.
That's so lame.
I was like, come on, because I forgot what I saw, and I was like, huh, like what's up with that? And then I checked the other ones. I'm like, oh no, it was like just mass unfollow. It's fine, it's all good.
Yeah,
maybe the wounds will heal in 10 years. Who knows? Yeah, I guess it's just part of it.
True fans keep following, right?
Yeah. The fans did, but the accounts didn't. The verified ones didn't. It's all good.
Well, that is only part one of the journey that you have gone through in this last month, maybe close to 2 months now. We're going to talk about the transfer portal, but not this episode, unfortunately, for all your listeners. Come back somehow.
Yeah, it's gonna be some interesting stuff. I have a few stories, and like we do on this podcast, I'll try and keep it as unfiltered as possible.
That's right. Unfiltered conversations. Before we go, a couple of in-house reminders. One, if you love our podcast so much, go out and vote for us on the Sports Podcast Awards. We are up for Best College Sports Podcast. Adrian and I would be very thankful if you went out and voted for us. Voting is open until March, so go and do it, please.
Most definitely. Please.
And a reminder, if you haven't caught up, make sure to go back. We got 11 episodes full of great content during the season. We recorded in the summer as well. Plenty of great stories from players who are at the University of Nebraska and whatnot, and stories that during when Adrian was at Nebraska. And then finally, I want to give a shout out. Both of us want to give a shout out to Ryan Fansler, who was so kind.
Yeah. Awesome helmet.
Make this helmet. It's so cool. I mean, folks, look at this.
Yeah.
The logo, face mask is awesome.
Yeah, it's badass. Much appreciated.
We'll certainly try and include this as much as we can, but thank you, Ryan, for that. But that's going to wrap things up here for Athletes Unfiltered, episode number 1 of season 2. Adrian, final words before we go.
I just want to thank the supporters, the fans, the people who stuck with me through the ups and downs, and take the time to listen to this podcast. I truly do appreciate you, and I hope you know how much it means to me. And we're going to make this even better. This is only going up, like we always say, and I'm looking forward to telling some more great stories about Nebraska, about some of my former teammates, and with some new faces as well.
Certainly right. It only gets better from here. Make sure to follow our social medias at ATH Unfiltered, at Martinez the QB, and myself at X on Sports. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening and your support. Don't worry, we'll be back soon with plenty of more unfiltered conversations. This isn't a press conference. This is Athletes Unfiltered. We'll talk to you soon.